My peaceful retirement was shattered when my daughter-in-law unexpectedly dropped off my 3 young grandchildren. She coldly accused me of failing as a mother to my son, Benjamin. Then she dismissed my granddaughter Lily's heartfelt wish to stay with me, claiming I was too old. I simply watched her leave, a slow burn igniting within me. She thought she could break me, but she had no idea who she was dealing with. I need to tell you my story. Like, share, and let me know where you're listening from. The silence of my retirement had become a cherished companion, a testament to 43 years dedicated to the demanding, often heartbreaking, work of a nurse. Every morning, I woke to the gentle glow of the sun through my bedroom window, not the jarring beep of an alarm clock. My days were a peaceful rhythm of tending to my garden, reading by the fireplace, and enjoying the quiet solitude that was a hard-won reward. This house, meticulously kept and filled with memories, was my sanctuary, a haven where I could finally rest and reflect. That tranquil morning was shattered by an insistent ring at the doorbell, sharp and sudden. I opened the door, a polite smile on my face, only for it to freeze instantly. Standing on my porch was my daughter-in-law, Chloe, a forced, brittle smile on her own lips. Beside her stood my 3 grandchildren, Lily, a wide-eyed 6-year-old, clutching a worn teddy bear; Leo, a boisterous 4-year-old already attempting to bolt past her legs; and little Daisy, barely 2, nestled in Chloe's arm, looking utterly bewildered. Before I could even voice my surprise or offer a greeting, Chloe's words cut through the morning air like shards of ice. "Evelyn," she began, her tone laced with a biting condescension. "You raised 1 man and failed. Let's see if you can manage 3 toddlers. I'm off to yoga. Bye." With that callous pronouncement, she practically shoved Leo forward, carefully handed me Daisy, and, without another glance back, turned on her heel. I stood there, dumbfounded, a toddler suddenly heavy in my arms, watching her slim figure disappear down the driveway, her car door slamming shut with an emphatic finality. Her dismissal felt like a physical slap, leaving a burning sting on my cheek that was purely emotional. It wasn't just the unexpected burden, though that was significant. It was the complete indifference, the casual cruelty of her words, as if I were a mere convenience, an object to be used and discarded. I swallowed hard, trying to process the sudden shift in my reality, my gaze falling to Lily, who stood rooted to the spot, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and confusion. "Grandma Evelyn," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Is Mommy coming back?" My heart ached, a deep, sharp pain, for the innocence in her question and the brutal truth that I suspected. Chloe's accusation, "You raised 1 man and failed," echoed in the sudden quiet of the morning, a venomous whisper that burrowed deep into my soul. It wasn't the first time she'd cast such a shadow over my son, Benjamin, but it was undoubtedly the cruelest. How dare she? Benjamin was a good man, a kind man, devoted to his children, despite his struggles with his marriage to Chloe. He was not a failure, he was my son, and I had sacrificed everything for him. After his father died so tragically young, I had poured every ounce of my being into raising him. Every extra shift I worked as a nurse, every dream deferred, every personal want set aside, had been for Benjamin, to give him a chance, to ensure he never felt the gaping void of his father's absence. He grew into a loving, responsible adult, a testament to my unwavering dedication, not a mark of my failure. Chloe's words were a deliberate stab, an attempt to invalidate not just Benjamin, but me, his mother. The peaceful sanctuary I had so carefully cultivated evaporated in an instant. My meticulously tidy living room quickly descended into a whirlwind of chaos. Daisy, still recovering from the shock of her mother's abrupt departure, had an accident on my pristine rug, her cries echoing through the house. Leo, in his boundless energy, discovered the juice box I'd offered, only to send a sticky crimson cascade across my white sofa. Lily, though quieter, looked overwhelmed, hovering near me as I tried to manage the escalating pandemonium, my peaceful retirement suddenly feeling like a distant dream. The hours crawled by, a blur of cleanups, snack negotiations, and desperate attempts to introduce some semblance of order. My back, usually uncomplaining, began to ache with the unaccustomed strain. Just as I felt I might reach my breaking point, the familiar slam of Chloe's car door announced her return. She glided into the living room, looking impossibly refreshed, her hair perfectly coiffed, her yoga clothes spotless. Her gaze swept over the messy scene. The damp rug, the juice-stained cushion, the scattered toys. With a barely concealed satisfaction that twisted my gut. It was as if she had orchestrated this very moment, watching her grand experiment unfold. Then, a small, clear voice cut through the tension. Lily, usually so timid, stepped forward and looked directly at Chloe. "Mommy," she said quietly, but with a surprising firmness, "I want to stay with Grandma Evelyn." A flicker of something undefinable crossed Chloe's face. Perhaps surprise, annoyance, or a fleeting moment of self-reproach, quickly masked. Chloe recovered swiftly, her smile tightening. "Oh, Lily," she chided, her voice saccharine. "Grandma Evelyn is tired. She's not used to children anymore. She needs her rest. Darling, you know how old she is." She dismissed Lily's heartfelt wish, and in doing so, dismissed me, trivializing my capacity and my love, making me feel utterly invisible. With another abrupt, "Bye, Evelyn," she herded the children out, leaving me standing amidst the wreckage of my once peaceful morning. After they finally left, the silence that settled back into the house was profound. But it was not the comforting quiet I cherished. It was a heavy, deafening silence, punctuated by the lingering scent of spilled juice and the stark visual of tiny shoes discarded on my polished floor. I sank onto the edge of the now sticky sofa, the tears coming unbidden, hot and stinging. They weren't just for the mess, or the exhaustion, or even for Lily's sad request. They were for the raw, unadulterated pain of Chloe's casual cruelty, for the insult to my motherhood, and for the way she had so effortlessly, so deliberately, diminished me. I cried until there were no more tears left, until only a hollow ache remained. But as the last sob subsided, something else began to stir within me, a slow, simmering fire. It was anger, pure and potent, replacing the hurt. Chloe thought she could break me, that she could walk all over me and my past. She was about to learn who Evelyn truly was. I knew she'd be back, and next time, I would be ready. True to my grim expectation, Chloe returned. Not just once, but day after day, almost with the precision of a clockwork mechanism. Each morning, a new activity was her excuse: yoga, Pilates, brunch with friends, a shopping trip, and each morning, the 3 children were deposited on my doorstep, sometimes with a perfunctory, "Thanks, Evelyn." More often with just a dismissive wave. My peaceful retirement, the sanctuary I had meticulously built, was now a bustling daycare. Yet, amidst the chaos, a new routine, unexpected and tender, began to weave itself into the fabric of my days. Lily, Leo, and Daisy, initially overwhelmed and disoriented, slowly started to unfurl their true selves under my care. My initial resentment towards Chloe, though still simmering, began to be overshadowed by a growing affection for these little beings who now filled my home with noise, laughter, and sometimes heartbreaking quietude. As a former nurse, I had trained myself to observe, to notice the subtle cues others might miss. And with the children spending so much time with me, these observations became increasingly stark and troubling. Lily, at 6, was a bright, articulate girl, usually quite self-sufficient, but I noticed a disturbing pattern of accidents. She would wet herself multiple times a day, sometimes just moments after using the bathroom, her small face crumpling in shame. More concerning still, she flinched, almost imperceptibly, at sudden movements or loud noises. A dropped spoon, a door closing a little too forcefully, would make her visibly startle, her eyes darting around as if expecting some unseen threat. It was a reflex I recognized, a sign of ingrained fear. One afternoon, after another accident, I knelt beside Lily, gently cleaning her up. I looked into her eyes, trying to convey only comfort and understanding. "It's all right, sweet pea," I murmured. "Accidents happen. It's nothing to be ashamed of. Her small shoulders trembled, and she looked up at me, her voice a barely audible whisper. Mommy gets angry when you have accidents. The words landed like a physical blow, shattering the calm I had tried to create. My heart broke for her, a sharp, splintering pain. This wasn't just a child having an accident. This was a child terrified of a normal bodily function because of an adult's harsh reaction. Leo, at 4, was a whirlwind of energy, a boisterous boy who, at first, seemed entirely unbound by rules. He would throw food from his high chair, kick at the legs of the dining table, and shout to get attention, his frustration quickly escalating into tantrums. There was a wildness about him, an almost desperate need for control that manifested as a complete lack of it. It was exhausting, a constant battle of wills, and I often found myself bewildered by the sheer force of his disobedience. My nursing background, which had taught me patience and empathy, was tested daily by his erratic behavior. Yet, despite his initial defiance, I persisted with calm, firm boundaries. Leo, we don't throw food. Food stays on the table, I would say, gently but consistently, removing the offending item. We use inside voices. Darling, when he shrieked. To my surprise, and my immense relief, he began to respond. Slowly, tentatively, a different side of Leo emerged. He wasn't just a wild child. He was a child craving structure, desperately needing the security that firm, consistent rules provided. Once he understood the expectations, he began to follow them, occasionally even flashing a shy, respectful smile that melted my heart. It was clear he hadn't experienced this kind of consistent guidance before. Little Daisy, the 2-year-old, presented her own set of worries. She barely spoke, communicating mostly through a series of emphatic points and whines. Her vocabulary seemed restricted to a handful of rudimentary sounds, far below what was expected for a child her age. There were no coherent sentences, no attempts to mimic words, just frustrated grunts and outstretched fingers. Her speech was significantly delayed, a red flag that screamed at my inner nurse, suggesting a lack of engagement, interaction, and stimulation in her primary environment. She often seemed lost in her own world, easily distressed, and difficult to soothe. One evening, as I was tucking them into bed, Lily, her small hand clutching mine, looked up at me with profound sadness in her eyes. "Grandma Evelyn," she asked, her voice hushed. "Why does Mommy cry in her room?" The question hung in the air, heavy and disturbing. Before I could even formulate a comforting answer, Leo, usually so focused on his own world, piped up from his cot, his voice a little louder, a little more matter-of-fact. "And she throws things," he added, eyes wide. "I heard a big crash yesterday. Mommy told us we're not allowed to tell anyone." The pieces, which had been scattered across my mind in disjointed fragments, suddenly clicked into place with a horrifying clarity. It wasn't just that Chloe was using me as a convenient babysitter. She wasn't just neglecting the children. She was emotionally harming them. The flinching, Lily's fear of accidents, Leo's initial wildness and craving for boundaries, Daisy's delayed speech, the unexplained crying, the throwing of objects. It all painted a chilling picture of a home environment riddled with chaos, inconsistency, and emotional neglect. These weren't just 3 active children, they were traumatized children, dumped on my doorstep, their mother completely oblivious, or perhaps willfully blind, to the silent cries for help they were exhibiting. That evening, a sense of urgency propelled me to the phone. I had to talk to Benjamin. I had to make him see. When he answered, his voice sounded tired, laced with a familiar weariness that had become characteristic of him whenever Chloe was mentioned. I carefully recounted my observations: the accidents, Leo's behavior, Daisy's lack of speech, and then, with a hesitant breath, I relayed what the children had said about Chloe. "Benjamin," I pleaded, "something is very wrong here. These children are showing signs of stress, of neglect. They need help." There was a long pause on the other end, filled with what felt like a sigh that carried the weight of the world. "Mom, I know Chloe can be a lot," he finally said, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. Things are stressful here. We're just going through a rough patch. Kids are resilient. They'll be fine. He dismissed my concerns, brushing them away as if they were insignificant trifles, mere exaggerations from an overly concerned grandmother. It was clear he was either too exhausted, too defeated, or too deeply entrenched in his own pain to truly hear me. Or perhaps, too afraid of the implications. "I really have to go, Mom," he said quickly, his voice already fading. "I have a big meeting early tomorrow." And just like that, the line went dead, leaving me alone in the quiet house once more. The phone clicked back into its cradle, but the silence felt even heavier than before. My worry compounded, forming a suffocating weight in my chest. Benjamin's dismissal, his profound exhaustion, only served to highlight the grim reality. These children were trapped in a cycle of chaos, inconsistency, and profound emotional neglect, and their father, my son, was powerless to intervene. Or perhaps, unwilling to acknowledge the depth of the problem. They were not fine. They were hurting, and it was now abundantly clear that if anyone was going to do anything, it had to be me. The next morning, the shrill ring of the doorbell cut through the quiet earlier than usual. It was barely 8 o'clock. When I opened the door, a wave of concern washed over me. Chloe stood there, not in her usual pristine yoga attire, but in wrinkled clothes, her hair disheveled, and dark circles smudged under her eyes. The carefully constructed facade of effortless perfection had completely crumbled, revealing a raw, haggard woman underneath. She looked as though she hadn't slept, or perhaps, had been crying. Her usual brittle smile was replaced by a grimace of exhaustion. "Evelyn," she began, her voice hoarse, devoid of its usual condescending edge. "I need you to take them for the whole day." She gestured vaguely at the 3 children clustered around her legs. "I have appointments." The word hung in the air, ambiguous and heavy, but her tone brooked no argument. There was a desperation in her eyes that was profoundly unsettling, a stark contrast to her usual aloofness. Before I could respond, she hurried the children inside, gave me a quick, almost apologetic nod, and practically ran back to her car, leaving me with the bewildered trio. As soon as they were inside, their behaviors, already familiar to me, escalated. Lily, whose bladder control was still an issue, immediately darted towards the bathroom, a look of desperate urgency on her face. Leo, already wired and restless, began bouncing off the walls, literally ricocheting between the furniture, his small body a bundle of uncontrolled energy. Little Daisy, instead of exploring, retreated into herself, rocking back and forth on the floor, humming a low, tuneless melody, her gaze distant and unfocused. The scene spoke volumes, a silent symphony of distress. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the turmoil I felt rising within me. Seeing Chloe's raw vulnerability, however fleeting, softened my approach. I thought perhaps if I offered constructive help, rather than confrontation, it might penetrate her hardened shell. "Chloe," I began, my voice gentle. "I've noticed the children could really benefit from a consistent routine, some more structure. It helps them feel secure, especially when things are unsettling." I chose my words carefully, hoping to appeal to her, mother to mother. But the moment of shared vulnerability vanished instantly. Chloe's eyes hardened, and a bitter, humorless laugh escaped her lips. "Oh, please don't start with the parenting advice, Evelyn," she sneered, the condescension returning full force. "We all know how well that worked out with Benjamin, don't we?" The barb was sharp, intended to wound, and it found its mark. The familiar pain twisted in my gut, but this time, it was quickly overshadowed by a surge of frustration and a renewed determination. Before I could even formulate a retort, a small, clear voice cut through the tense air. Lily, who had finished in the bathroom and silently rejoined us, looked up at her mother, her little face etched with worry. "Mommy," she asked, her voice soft but direct, "are you going to cry today?" The question hung, heavy and pointed. In the sudden silence, Chloe froze, her entire body stiffening, the anger drained from her face, replaced by a raw, naked fear, a flicker of sheer panic in her eyes. It was the face of someone caught, exposed, and utterly terrified. For a brief, astonishing moment, Chloe's harsh demeanor dissolved. She knelt down, gathering Lily into an awkward embrace. "No, sweet pea," she murmured, her voice surprisingly gentle, almost a whisper. The gentleness was shocking, completely out of character. It was short-lived, however. She quickly pulled away, her movements jerky, and then, without another word, she practically fled. As she walked to her car, I saw her shoulders shaking, a clear tremor passing through her frame. She looked utterly broken, a shadow of the woman who usually prided herself on her perfect image. Watching her leave, I finally understood. This wasn't just about Chloe needing a babysitter for her social calendar. This was a crisis. Her problems were much bigger, much deeper than a simple desire for free time. She was spiraling, losing control, and her children were bearing the brunt of her emotional turmoil. My heart ached for them. These three innocent beings caught in the crossfire of their parents' failing marriage and their mother's evident distress. That day, I listened. I didn't just hear the children. I truly listened. Every casual comment, every half-whispered complaint, every seemingly innocent observation about their home life, I tucked away, examining it like a vital piece of evidence. "Mommy says she doesn't like the food Daddy cooks," Lily would say, picking at her lunch. "Daddy shouts when Mommy throws her phone," Leo would declare matter-of-factly, building a tower of blocks. "Bad noises," Daisy would whimper, clinging to my leg when a car backfired outside. Each little snippet painted a darker, more detailed picture of the chaotic, volatile environment they returned to each evening. When Chloe finally reappeared that afternoon, looking only marginally better, the children were already packed and ready to go. As Lily hugged me goodbye, she pulled me close, her tiny mouth pressed against my ear. "Grandma, Evelyn," she whispered, her voice laced with an urgent plea. "I don't want to go home. Can we stay here forever?" My heart clenched, a painful vice. "Why, sweet pea?" I murmured, stroking her hair. She looked up at me, her eyes large and brimming with unshed tears. "Because home is scary now," she confessed, her voice barely audible. In that moment, a firm, unyielding decision solidified within me. My grandchildren, my precious grandchildren, were paying the price for the dysfunction and distress festering in their own home. They were scared. They were hurting. And I, Evelyn, their grandmother, would protect them. The fire that had stirred within me after Chloe's initial insult now blazed into a roaring inferno of resolve. My 43 years as a nurse hadn't just taught me medical skills. They had honed my instincts. They had taught me to spot trouble, to recognize the subtle signs of distress, to understand the unspoken language of pain. More importantly, they had instilled in me an unwavering commitment to protect the vulnerable, to advocate for those who couldn't advocate for themselves. Chloe had gravely underestimated this old woman. She saw only a convenient babysitter, a bitter mother-in-law. She had no idea she had just awakened a formidable opponent. I was ready for a fight for my grandchildren's safety and well-being. 3 weeks had passed since Chloe first dropped off the children. 3 weeks that felt like an eternity and a blink of an eye all at once. My quiet home was now a vibrant, if sometimes chaotic, hub of childish energy. We had settled into a rhythm, an improvised routine that provided the children with the structure they craved. Lily was having fewer accidents. Leo's outbursts were less frequent and more manageable. And even Daisy was beginning to make hesitant attempts at new words. They were blooming under consistent care and affection, but the shadow of their home life still lingered, occasionally manifesting in a sudden withdrawal or a fearful glance. One afternoon, as I knelt to tie Lily's shoelaces before our trip to the park, she looked up at me, her brow furrowed in a way that mimicked an adult's worry. "Grandma Evelyn," she asked, her voice small and tentative, "what's a divorce?" The innocent question, delivered with such gravitas from a 6-year-old, sent a jolt of ice through me. My hands stilled, the shoelace forgotten. A cold dread began to coil in my stomach. "Why do you ask about that, sweet pea?" I managed, trying to keep my voice even, though my heart was pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Lily, seemingly unaware of the seismic shift her question had just caused, began to recount, in the disjointed but surprisingly accurate way children do, snippets of a conversation she had overheard. "Mommy was talking on the phone to Sarah," she began, her eyes wide as she recalled the memory. "She said she's going to get a divorce and take all of Daddy's money," she said. "Daddy won't know what hit him." My breath caught in my throat. The casual cruelty of Chloe's words, repeated by her innocent daughter, was chilling. Lily continued, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "And Mommy said something about custody, and that judges always believe the mother, so she'll get to keep us." The words, delivered with a child's simple accuracy, were like daggers, piercing through any lingering doubt I might have had about Chloe's intentions. It wasn't just Benjamin's money she was after. She was planning to weaponize the children. Suddenly, Chloe's earlier erratic behavior, her haggard appearance, her urgent appointments, and her constant phone calls all snapped into place with terrifying clarity. I had noticed her glued to her phone whenever she wasn't actively with the children. Her conversations were often hushed, punctuated by sudden bursts of anger if one of the children interrupted her. She frequently mentioned papers, always with a furtive glance around, as if afraid of being overheard. I had initially attributed it to general stress, perhaps a failing business venture or mounting personal problems. Now, the true, sinister meaning emerged. The pieces clicked, forming a horrifying mosaic. Chloe wasn't just having emotional problems, she was deliberately, meticulously planning to destroy Benjamin, and she intended to use their children, my grandchildren, as her primary weapons in a legal battle. The thought turned my stomach. She was a schemer, a manipulator, far more ruthless than I had ever imagined. I knew I couldn't navigate this alone. My mind immediately turned to my old friend, Eleanor. We had worked together for years at the hospital. She is a paralegal in their legal department, specializing in medical malpractice. And I, as a nurse, she had since moved to a family law firm, a connection I now realized was invaluable. I waited until the children were asleep that night, the house finally silent, before making the call. "Evelyn, it's been too long." Eleanor's warm voice was a welcome sound, a familiar anchor in the storm brewing around me. "Eleanor, I need your help," I said, my voice trembling slightly despite my efforts to keep it steady. "It's about Benjamin and Chloe." There was a beat of silence on the other end, then a knowing sigh. "Ah, I suspected as much, Evelyn," Eleanor said, her tone growing serious. "Their marriage has been on the rocks for a while, hasn't it? Chloe's reputation precedes her, even in legal circles." It seemed I wasn't the only one who saw through Chloe's facade. I took a deep breath and recounted everything. Chloe's initial drop-off, her cruel words, the children's distress, my observations of their neglect, and finally, the chilling conversation Lily had overheard. I repeated Lily's innocent words about taking all of Daddy's money and judges always believing the mother. Eleanor listened patiently, her silence punctuated only by the soft click of her pen. When I finished, the silence stretched, heavy and telling. "Evelyn," she finally said, her voice grave. "What you're describing." My blood ran cold. "Building a case? What do you mean?" "She's creating a narrative, Evelyn," Eleanor explained, her professional tone kicking in. "By dumping the children on you every day, she's trying to establish that she is overwhelmed, that she needs support. She's also subtly painting a picture that you, the grandmother, are the primary caregiver, the stable figure. This implies Benjamin is an absent or ineffective father, and that the children are happier and better off away from him. When they express a preference for you, it further strengthens her argument that their current home environment is unstable. She'll frame her daily appointments as necessary tasks she needs to undertake for the family's well-being, while simultaneously demonstrating her incapacity to care for the children full-time without external help. A wave of nausea washed over me. "So, she's using me?" I whispered, the realization dawning with sickening clarity. "She's using my care, my love for these children, as evidence against my own son?" "Exactly," Eleanor confirmed, her voice filled with sympathy. "She'll present herself as the dedicated mother, overwhelmed but trying her best, and you as the loving, supportive grandmother, filling in the gaps left by an absent or unengaged father. The children's statements, even innocent ones, will be twisted to support her claims of Benjamin's shortcomings and her own necessity as the primary parent in control of the finances. "What can I do?" I asked, my voice barely a croak. "You need to start documenting everything, Evelyn," Eleanor instructed, her voice firm. "Every single time Chloe drops them off. The exact date and time, the time she picks them up, and how long they stayed. Document their condition when they arrive. Any accidents, any signs of distress, any particular behaviors. Record verbatim any significant statements the children make about their home life, their parents, or their feelings. Keep a detailed log. It needs to be precise, factual, and unwavering. This will be crucial evidence if Benjamin wants to fight for custody, especially if Chloe tries to paint a false picture." I hung up the phone, my hand still trembling. The sick feeling in my stomach intensified, spreading through my chest. Chloe wasn't just a troubled woman. She was a calculated adversary. She was using me, the devoted grandmother, as an unwitting accomplice in her cruel plan to destroy Benjamin and sever his ties with his children. The betrayal was profound, and the realization sparked a cold, unyielding resolve. I would document everything, and I would make sure Chloe's plan backfired spectacularly. If you're finding Chloe's actions as shocking as I did, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear this story, and subscribe to follow along. There's so much more to uncover. Eleanor's words had ripped the veil from my eyes. My perception of Chloe shifted from a stressed, overwhelmed young woman to a cunning, manipulative strategist. Now, every interaction, every word she uttered, seemed to carry a hidden agenda. I started noticing her calculated actions, the way her phone was always just out of sight but clearly recording, or positioned to capture snippets of conversations. She wasn't just dropping off the children, she was gathering intelligence, building her narrative piece by insidious piece. She would often linger for a moment when picking up the children, her voice deceptively sweet as she posed leading questions to them, always within earshot of her phone, or perhaps recording directly. "Did you have more fun here with Grandma Evelyn than at home?" She'd coo, her eyes darting to my face for a reaction. Or, even more insidiously, "Doesn't Grandma take better care of you than Daddy does when he's busy?" The children, eager to please and unaware of the implications, would often nod or give simple, affirmative answers, entirely innocent of the legal snare Chloe was weaving. My stomach would twist into knots, but I had to maintain a neutral facade, knowing any outburst on my part would only serve her purpose. The depth of Chloe's deceit became shockingly clear one quiet afternoon. The children were playing in the living room, building a tower of blocks, their voices a soft murmur in the background. I was in the kitchen, washing dishes, half listening to their innocent chatter, when a specific phrase caught my attention, freezing me in place. Lily, in her typical older sister manner, was speaking to Daisy. "No, Sophie," she admonished softly, using Daisy's middle name, a special endearment. "You can't tell Mommy about the man." My hands, still submerged in soapy water, went cold. My heart hammered against my ribs. The man? Daisy, with her limited vocabulary, looked up at her sister, her little brow furrowed. "What man?" she mumbled, her words still slurred, but clear enough for me to understand. Lily leaned in conspiratorially, as if sharing the deepest secret of childhood. "The man who comes to see Mommy when Daddy's at work. Remember? Mommy said it's our special secret. We can't tell anyone, especially Daddy." My legs almost gave out beneath me. I gripped the edge of the sink, the room beginning to spin. A cold, nauseating realization washed over me. Chloe was having an affair. Not only that, but she was involving the children, coaching them to keep secrets from their own father. The betrayal was staggering, the depth of her callousness truly breathtaking. As if to confirm my worst fears, Daisy, still confused, piped up again. "Uncle Jake?" Uncle Jake was Benjamin's brother. A sweet man who occasionally helped Chloe with household tasks. Lily quickly corrected her, a hint of impatience in her voice. "No, not Uncle Jake. The other man. The one who brings Mommy flowers and makes her laugh. Mommy said he's a secret friend. The other man. Flowers. Laughter. The pieces locked into place, forming an undeniable, horrific picture. Chloe wasn't just planning a divorce and a custody battle. She was actively cheating on Benjamin. And she was using the children, those innocent, vulnerable children, to facilitate and hide her infidelity. This wasn't merely a messy marriage. It was a deliberate act of emotional cruelty, a systematic dismantling of Benjamin's life, with the children coerced into complicity. The revelation made my blood run cold, then boil with a furious indignation. That evening, Chloe arrived to pick up the children, and for the first time in weeks, she wasn't haggard or stressed. She was glowing, a smug, self-satisfied smile playing on her lips. Her eyes held a glint of triumph. "Well, Evelyn," she chirped, her voice light and airy, "I guess I'm just in a good place right now." Finally. She glanced at me, a challenge in her eyes, as if daring me to comment. I merely offered a tight, polite smile, the fury churning beneath my calm exterior. As she loaded the children into her car, she spoke into her Bluetooth headset, clearly oblivious to my proximity, or perhaps simply not caring. Her voice was hushed, flirtatious. "No, I can't tonight. I have to keep up appearances for a little while longer, you know." Then, Chloe's voice, lower now, almost a purr. "Trust me, darling, it'll be worth the wait." She winked, not at me, but into the rearview mirror, as if sharing a secret with an unseen confidant. My hands clenched at my sides. It wasn't just Benjamin she was destroying. She was dragging me into her deceitful web, making me an unwitting pawn in her cruel game. She was turning my grandchildren into keepers of dark secrets, eroding their innocence, and using their love for me as a weapon against their father. This woman was truly poisonous. The moment her car disappeared down the street, I turned and walked straight into my study. I pulled out a fresh notebook, its pages crisp and inviting, and a pen. With a renewed sense of purpose, a cold, hard determination, I began to meticulously document everything, every date, every time, every observation, every overheard conversation, every subtle shift in the children's demeanor, every chilling statement from Lily and Daisy. I started from the very first day Chloe had dropped them off, mentally replaying the past 3 weeks, filling in the details that now took on a sinister new meaning. I wrote until my hand cramped, until the pages were filled with the meticulous, damning evidence of Chloe's manipulation and deceit. Chloe had gravely underestimated me. She thought she was playing a clever game, a chess match against a naive old woman. But I had been playing chess, navigating complex human dynamics, anticipating moves, and protecting the vulnerable, long before she was even born. She might have thought she was setting the board, but I was about to make a move she would never see coming. The morning after my chilling discovery of Chloe's affair, I was up before dawn, the notebook filled with my initial frantic entries lying open on the kitchen table. The anger and betrayal had coalesced into a steely resolve. I didn't just want justice for Benjamin. I needed to protect my grandchildren from their own mother. I called Eleanor the moment her office opened. "Eleanor," I stated, my voice devoid of emotion, "I need to know everything about building a counter case, every single detail, because this woman has declared war on my family, and I intend to win it." My tone must have conveyed the gravity of the situation, because Eleanor didn't hesitate. "I'll be there in an hour, Evelyn," she responded, her voice firm and professional. "Don't tell her anything. Just keep observing." True to her word, Eleanor arrived with a serious, determined expression, armed with a legal pad, a digital camera, and a fresh coffee for me. We sat at my kitchen table, the quiet hum of the refrigerator the only sound as I recounted the full extent of Chloe's manipulation and deceit, culminating in the overheard conversation about the other man. Eleanor listened intently, her face impassive, occasionally jotting down notes. We began to establish a detailed timeline. It wasn't just the past 3 weeks. It gradually emerged that Chloe's babysitting had escalated over time, becoming almost full-time, unpaid childcare for nearly a year now. Initially, it was once or twice a week, then 3, Then almost every weekday, I had been so willing to help, to spend time with my grandchildren, that I hadn't seen the pattern for what it truly was. Eleanor circled dates, drawing connections I hadn't consciously made. We meticulously cataloged Chloe's vague reasons for dropping off the children. Yoga, Pilates, appointments that seemed to last all day, errands that never quite explained her relaxed demeanor upon return, and brunch with friends. Each excuse was now tainted with the bitter taste of deception. I detailed the children's alarming behavioral changes I had observed since their prolonged stays with me began. Lily's increased accidents and her fear of punishment, Leo's initial lack of boundaries, his tantrums, and then his surprising responsiveness to consistent rules, and most concerning, Daisy's significant speech delay and withdrawn nature. Eleanor nodded grimly throughout my recounting. "These are classic signs, Evelyn," Eleanor confirmed, her voice low. "Inconsistent parenting, emotional stress, lack of engagement, possible neglect. The children's behaviors are a direct reflection of the chaos and instability in their home environment. Chloe is not just building a custody case. She's been emotionally neglecting these children while simultaneously setting up your son to take the fall." A fresh wave of fury washed over me. The audacity, the cruelty of it all was sickening. Eleanor's words solidified my resolve. I would become a detective in my own home. My old nursing instincts kicked into overdrive. I began documenting everything with meticulous precision. The children's physical and emotional states upon arrival and departure, their eating habits, their sleep patterns, every interaction, every casual comment they made. Eleanor advised me to take photos discreetly if I ever noticed anything concerning, like fresh bruises or signs of neglect, but to prioritize the children's comfort and trust. A disturbing pattern began to emerge from my meticulous notes. Chloe's appointments almost always coincided with times Benjamin was at work, confirming my suspicions. It became clear that Chloe was prioritizing her affair, her secret life, over her children's basic needs. The very problems the children exhibited, the emotional distress, the behavioral issues, the developmental delays, were directly caused by her neglect and involvement of them in her sordid secrets. Yet she would undoubtedly attempt to use these very issues against Benjamin in court. She was creating the problems she sought to exploit. The final, undeniable confirmation of Chloe's infidelity and the extent of her children's involvement came from Lily a few days later. We were coloring at the kitchen table, the crayon smells filling the air. Lily, seemingly lost in thought, looked up at me, her eyes clouded with a child's profound confusion. "Grandma Evelyn," she whispered, her voice barely audible, "do you think Daddy knows about Mommy's boyfriend?" My hand, holding a purple crayon, froze mid-air. "Mommy's boyfriend? Sweet pea?" I asked, feigning casualness, though my heart pounded. Lily nodded, then launched into a heartbreakingly detailed account. "Yes, Robert. He brings Mommy pink flowers and a shiny bracelet. He comes to our house when Daddy's at work. Mommy makes us go to our rooms and be quiet, and then I hear her laughing with him in the kitchen. Sometimes, they kiss." She paused, then added, "Mommy says it's our special secret, but I don't like secrets." The details were excruciating. Robert. Pink flowers. A shiny bracelet. Kissing in the kitchen. Confining the children to their rooms. The affair had been ongoing for at least 6 weeks, not just a recent dalliance, and the children, my grandchildren, were forced to be unwilling accomplices, their innocence tainted by their mother's deceit. The depth of the psychological manipulation was staggering. Later that afternoon, when Chloe arrived to pick them up, she was in a particularly irritable mood. Daisy, sensing her mother's tension, clung to my leg, whimpering, reluctant to leave. Chloe snatched her up with an impatient sigh. But then, as she buckled Lily into her car seat, she asked, "Did you have a good day with Grandma Evelyn?" Lily, ever truthful, replied, "Yes, Mommy. It's much quieter here." A flash of satisfaction crossed Chloe's face. "See? Isn't it nice and calm here?" she pressed, her tone practically coaching the child. "Much better than at home. Right?" It was blatant, brazen manipulation, right in front of my eyes. As soon as her car was out of sight, I called Eleanor again, my voice shaking with a mixture of rage and despair. "Eleanor," I choked out. "She's not just having an affair, she's alienating them from Benjamin. Making them keep secrets. It's parental alienation, Eleanor. It's psychological abuse." Eleanor listened, her voice grim when she finally spoke. "I know, Evelyn. This is exactly why we need meticulous documentation. Every single incident. Keep it factual. Keep it detailed. It will be the only way to expose her true character in court. Keep going, Evelyn. Don't stop." Her words were a chilling reminder of the battle ahead, but also a necessary affirmation of my mission. The atmosphere in my home had become a delicate balance of nurturing and clandestine observation. Every day, I documented, watching Chloe's increasingly careless behavior. One morning, she arrived, phone already ringing, and answered it on speaker, right in my doorway. She usually exercised more discretion, but today, she seemed distracted, almost rushed. "Hey, baby!" A man's voice purred from the phone, loud and clear in my quiet hall. "Are you free? I miss you." Chloe's face, usually so composed, went instantly white. Her eyes darted to mine, then frantically to Lily, Leo, and Daisy, who were already stepping inside. Before Chloe could even attempt a clumsy cover-up, Lily's voice, bright and innocent, cut through the tension. "That's Mommy's friend," she exclaimed, pointing to the phone. "The one who brings the flowers." The words hung in the air, a smoking gun. Chloe's carefully constructed facade had crumbled in an instant. The affair, previously a carefully guarded secret, was now overtly confirmed, spoken aloud by her own child in front of me. I calmly made a mental note to add this exact interaction, including Lily's precise words, to my meticulous log the moment Chloe was gone. She had handed me the proof on a silver platter. As soon as her car disappeared, I called Eleanor, my voice tight with triumph and urgency. "She's getting sloppy, Eleanor," I reported. "The affair is making her careless. Lily just confirmed everything." "Liv," in front of me. Eleanor's response was immediate and firm. "Evelyn, it's time. You need to speak with Benjamin. We can't wait any longer." A cold knot of fear tightened in my stomach. "But what if he doesn't believe me?" I voiced my lingering apprehension. "He always dismisses my concerns about Chloe. He's so beaten down." "He has to, Evelyn," Eleanor insisted, her voice resonating with an unshakable conviction. "If we wait much longer, those children are going to be caught in the middle of a custody battle that could destroy them. They're already suffering. You have the evidence now. You have to present it." Her words echoed in my mind, a rallying cry. The revolution had arrived. I had been diligently collecting my cards, and now it was time to play them. The breaking point, the moment of undeniable confrontation, arrived 3 days before Thanksgiving. The morning was unusually cold, mirroring the chill that settled in my heart when Chloe pulled into my driveway at 7:30 a.m., with not only the children, but also a large suitcase. A sick feeling washed over me. "I need you to keep them for the whole week," she announced, her voice strained, avoiding my gaze. "There's a family emergency. Out of town." It was a lie. I knew it immediately. Her eyes, frantic and evasive, gave her away. But what truly appalled me was the state of the children. Lily's usually neat hair was a tangled mess, unbrushed and matted. Leo wore clothes that were clearly too small, his wrists and ankles exposed. And Daisy, poor Daisy, was clearly in a soiled diaper, the strong, unmistakable smell wafting towards me. My nurse's training screamed at the neglect. I felt a quiet fury ignite within me, burning away all fear and hesitation. I looked Chloe squarely in the eye, my voice low and steady, belying the tempest raging inside. "How long has it been since these children had a proper bath, Chloe?" I asked, my gaze unwavering. "And when did they last eat?" Lily, sensing the tension but unable to filter her truth, piped up immediately, her voice small. "Grandma Evelyn, we didn't have breakfast. Mommy said we could eat here, The confirmation, stark and innocent, was devastating. I took a deep breath, the smell of Daisy's diaper almost overpowering. I stood up, slowly, deliberately, meeting Chloe's increasingly panicked gaze. I asked, my voice still calm, but with an underlying steel that brooked no denial. Chloe, momentarily thrown by Lily's honest answer, quickly composed herself, her face hardening. "Nothing is going on, Evelyn. I said it's a family emergency. And I would never neglect my children. How dare you accuse me of such a thing? It is when you're leaving 3 neglected children on my doorstep. Chloe," I stated, gesturing vaguely at the disheveled, hungry children. "Their clothes are dirty, their hair is a mess, and Daisy is in a soiled diaper. They haven't had breakfast. That's neglect." Chloe erupted, her carefully constructed composure shattering. "Oh, and you're such an expert, aren't you?" she screeched, her voice rising. "You barely managed to raise 1 child after his father died. You struggled, Evelyn. Don't pretend you were some perfect single mother." I held up a hand, stopping her mid-tirade. "You're not a single mother, Chloe," I said, my voice cutting through her anger, cold and sharp. Her face faltered, a flicker of fear in her eyes. "So, you dump them on me 5 days a week while you meet with your boyfriend?" I let the question hang in the air, weighted with the full force of my knowledge. Chloe's jaw dropped. Her face drained of all color, leaving her ashen. "What?" she stammered, recovering quickly. "You're delusional, Evelyn. You have no idea what you're talking about. Prove it," she challenged, her voice a desperate, high-pitched demand. Without a word, I walked to my study, returning moments later with the manila folder. It was thick, heavy, with the meticulous documentation I had compiled. I held it out to her, presenting it like a deadly weapon. Chloe's eyes widened, recognizing the ominous weight of its contents. She lunged for it, a guttural cry escaping her lips, but I was quicker, pulling it back just out of her reach. "I'm not using them against you, Chloe," I stated, my voice a low, steady rumble of power. "I'm protecting them from you." Her face contorted with rage. She unleashed a torrent of insults, not at me, but at Benjamin, a desperate attempt to deflect. She called him weak, pathetic, a failure in every sense, claiming he couldn't satisfy her, that he was the cause of all her unhappiness. The venom in her words was astounding, truly horrific. Then, a small, trembling voice broke through her hateful tirade. Lily, pale with shock, her eyes wide and tear-filled, looked at her mother. "Mommy," she whimpered. "You're being mean to Grandma Evelyn." Chloe froze, her rage draining away, replaced by a sudden, chilling defeat. The children were watching, listening, processing the ugly truth. She looked at Lily, then at me, then at the folder, her shoulders slumping. "This isn't over, Evelyn," she vowed, her voice raw with hatred. "I'll destroy you before I let that happen." With that, she snatched the suitcase, stormed out the door, and slammed it shut with a resounding bang that echoed through the house. Lily immediately burst into heart-wrenching sobs. "Is Mommy going to take us away from you?" she wailed, clutching onto my leg. Leo and Daisy, sensing the seismic shift, began to cry too, their small bodies trembling. I gathered all 3 into my arms, holding them tight, stroking their hair, murmuring reassurances. The tears streamed down my face, but they were no longer tears of pain or fear. They were tears of fierce, unyielding resolve. The war had begun. As soon as the children were somewhat calmed and distracted, I called Eleanor, my voice still shaking, but resolute. "She knows, Eleanor. We know. And she's going nuclear." Eleanor's response was immediate. "Then it's time. Evelyn. Call Benjamin. Now." The evening stretched, heavy with anticipation after Chloe's explosive departure. I had managed to soothe the children, settling them in the living room with a movie and warm blankets, a stark, innocent contrast to the storm brewing outside. Just as Eleanor had instructed, I called Benjamin, simply asking him to come over, that it was urgent. He arrived within the hour, looking utterly worn, his shoulders slumped, his usually sharp eyes dulled by exhaustion. He seemed to have aged years in the past few months. I noticed Chloe's car parked down the street, her silhouette visible through the tinted window, still on her phone, undoubtedly spinning her version of events to some unfortunate recipient. Benjamin stepped inside, his gaze immediately falling on me, then darting to the living room where the children were engrossed in their film. "Mom," he began, his voice flat. "Chloe says you're trying to steal our children. She says you've lost your mind." He looked confused, almost defeated, caught between two conflicting narratives. I led him to the kitchen table, the manila folder conspicuously placed there. "Sit down, Benjamin," I said, my voice gentle but firm. "I know you're confused, and I know Chloe has been manipulating you for a long time. Everything I've done, everything I'm about to show you, has been to protect you and those children." He sat heavily, rubbing his temples. "I don't know what to think anymore, Mom," he sighed, the words heavy with genuine despair. "Everything's been falling apart for so long, I just don't know what's real." Without another word, I pushed the manila folder across the table towards him. "This is real," I stated. "Open it." For the next hour, I laid out the evidence. I watched his face as he read through the meticulous entries. The dates and times Chloe dropped off the children, their conditions, their behaviors, the details of their neglected state. I recounted the emotional manipulation, Chloe's leading questions, her attempts to turn the children against him. Then, with a heavy heart, I explained the affair. Lily's innocent words about Mommy's friend, the one with the flowers, the kissing in the kitchen, the children being confined to their rooms. Benjamin's face shifted through a spectrum of raw emotions. Confusion gave way to shock, then to profound heartbreak, and finally, to a cold, simmering rage. He kept rereading the entries, his hand trembling slightly. "She's been having an affair?" he whispered, the words barely audible, as if the concept was too monumental to fully grasp. The betrayal, the manipulation, the calculated cruelty. It was all hitting him at once. He saw the pattern now, the insidious game Chloe had been playing. He picked up the pages detailing the children's distress, his eyes scanning the notes about Lily's accidents, Leo's erratic behavior, Daisy's delayed speech. He finally understood the direct correlation between their mother's neglect and their suffering. Lily's accidents. "From the stress," he murmured, his voice thick with dawning horror. "Leo's behavior, because we weren't giving him consistent rules. Daisy. Her speech, because she wasn't getting enough engagement." The pieces of the puzzle clicked into place for him, revealing a devastating truth he had been too close, too exhausted, to see. His gaze lifted to mine, his eyes swimming with unshed tears. "What do I do, Mom?" he asked, his voice breaking, filled with a desperate plea. "How do I fix this?" Just then, a car door slammed outside. "Chloe." I glanced at my watch. She was early. Benjamin's face went white. He knew this was it. I quickly pulled out a small digital recorder from my pocket, pressing record before handing it to him. "Stay calm, Benjamin," I advised, my voice low and urgent. "Don't let her provoke you. Just listen, and let her talk. Let her expose herself." The front door burst open. Chloe stood there, her face contorted with fury, her phone still pressed to her ear. "I'm on the phone with my lawyer," she shrieked, her voice shrill. "I'm demanding emergency custody. Where are my children?" Benjamin, gripping the recorder, stood up, his face pale, but his eyes now burning with a cold resolve I hadn't seen in years. "They're here, Chloe," he said, his voice surprisingly steady. "And they're staying here tonight. There are some disturbing things we need to discuss." Chloe let out a harsh, hysterical laugh. "Disturbing things? Oh, did she show you her little spy journal?" she sneered, pointing a trembling finger at me. "She showed me evidence," Benjamin corrected, his voice dangerously quiet. "That you've been having an affair, Chloe." Chloe's mask completely slipped. Her face registered pure shock, then panic. For a moment, she was utterly speechless. Then, she rallied, her face contorting with a renewed rage. "So what if I was?" she shrieked, her voice rising to a fever pitch. "You drove me to it, Benjamin. You were never around, never supportive, never satisfied me." Benjamin's voice, though still quiet, was deadly, laced with an icy calm. "Did I drive you to neglect them too?" he asked, his gaze sweeping towards the living room, where the children's movie had been paused by the commotion. Just then, Lily appeared from the living room, rubbing her eyes sleepily, drawn by the escalating noise. "Why is everyone yelling?" she mumbled, her small face confused. She looked at Chloe, then at me. Without hesitation, she walked past her mother and took my hand, clinging to me. "Home is scary," Lily said quietly, looking up at Benjamin, her innocent words cutting through the tense air like a knife. She then, with heartbreaking clarity, recounted Chloe's boyfriend, the pink flowers, the crying, and how Mommy forced them into their rooms when Robert was there. Chloe attempted to dismiss Lily's words, a desperate, "She's just confused." But Benjamin held up a hand. "No, Chloe," he stated, his voice now firm, unwavering. "I understand perfectly what you've been doing to our family, what you've been doing to our children." As if on cue, Leo and Daisy, roused by the commotion, also emerged from the living room. They didn't go to Chloe. They shuffled directly to my side, clustering around my legs, their small bodies a silent, powerful testament to where they truly felt safe, where they found comfort. Chloe looked at her children clinging to me, then at Benjamin, his face a mask of resolve, then at the manila folder. The fight drained from her. Her shoulders slumped in utter defeat. "Fine," she spat, her voice thick with resentment. "I want a divorce, and I want half of everything." Benjamin, his eyes cold and unwavering, met her gaze. "You can have the divorce, Chloe," he replied, his voice steady and strong. "But after everything you've done, you'll be lucky to get supervised visitation." The months that followed Chloe's explosive departure were a relentless blur of legal proceedings, emotionally taxing custody evaluations, and endless trips to the family court. It was a brutal, draining period. But throughout it all, Benjamin stood firm, his newfound resolve fueled by the cold, hard evidence and the unwavering support Eleanor and I provided. He had finally seen Chloe for who she truly was, and there was no turning back. Eleanor had been absolutely right. My meticulously documented evidence, the dates, times, conditions of the children, their exact statements, Chloe's leading questions, the overheard phone call, Lily's revelation about the other man, formed the unshakable foundation of Benjamin's case. It painted a devastatingly clear picture of neglect, emotional manipulation, and blatant infidelity. Every single detail I had noted down, every suspicion I had harbored, now served as an irrefutable testament to Chloe's deceit. Chloe, in her arrogance and self-interest, dug her own grave. Her outbursts in court, her inconsistent stories, and especially her attempts to portray Benjamin as an unfit father while simultaneously claiming to be overwhelmed by the children, all backfired spectacularly. The emotional manipulation of the children, particularly how she forced them to keep secrets about her affair, horrified the judge and the court-appointed child advocate. The most poignant moment, the one that truly sealed the outcome, came during the private session in chambers with the children and the judge. Lily, still small but incredibly articulate for her age, was asked where she wanted to live. Her simple, heartfelt answer, delivered without hesitation, was the resounding truth: with Daddy and Grandma Evelyn. Her words, echoed by the children's comfort and improved demeanor in my care, spoke volumes. The divorce was finally finalized in March, a long, arduous process culminating in a definitive victory for Benjamin and the children. Benjamin was granted primary custody, a decision that brought a wave of relief and deep gratitude over us. Chloe was awarded supervised visitation every other weekend, a clear indication of the court's grave concerns about her parenting and judgment. Benjamin also kept the family house and most of their shared assets, a consequence of Chloe's financial mismanagement and her established infidelity. Robert, the affair partner, true to the fleeting nature of such relationships, had vanished without a trace, leaving Chloe to face the consequences alone. The true victory, however, wasn't measured in legal documents or financial settlements. It was measured in the healing, in the restoration of peace, and in the sheer joy of new beginnings. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, Benjamin and the children moved into the house right next door to mine. It had been on the market for a while, and Benjamin, with the legal settlement and a renewed sense of purpose, had quickly secured it. The very first thing we did was tear down the weathered wooden fence that separated our properties. With the children's excited laughter ringing in our ears, Benjamin and I, along with a few helpful friends, dismantled the barrier, creating one large, expansive yard where Lily, Leo, and Daisy could run freely between our homes, their laughter echoing without constraint. On a warm Saturday afternoon, just as spring was in full bloom, I sat on my porch swing, a cup of tea in my hand, watching them. Lily, ever the nurturing older sister, knelt in a patch of newly tilled earth, patiently teaching Daisy how to plant sunflower seeds, their small hands covered in soil. Leo and Benjamin, their heads bent in concentration, were collaborating on building a sturdy treehouse in the ancient oak that dominated the merged yard. The scene was one of idyllic harmony, a vision of the peaceful, loving home I had fought so hard to create. Lily, feeling my gaze, looked up from her planting, her face bright with sunshine and a scattering of dirt. She caught my eye and flashed a wide, genuine smile. "Grandma Evelyn," she called out, her voice clear and joyful. "Are you happy?" I looked around. I saw Benjamin, laughing freely as Leo made a silly suggestion for the treehouse design. I saw Daisy, chattering away, her speech greatly improved, her little sentences now full of curiosity and wonder. I saw the sunlit yard, the symbol of a unified family, finally safe and whole. A profound sense of peace settled over me, deeper and more fulfilling than any retirement solitude could offer. "Yes, sweetheart," I said, a warmth spreading through my chest as I held her gaze. "I'm very happy." Chloe's cruel words, "You raised one man and failed," echoed faintly in my memory, but they were now utterly hollow, devoid of their power. She was wrong. So utterly, profoundly wrong. I had not failed. I had raised a good man, a strong man, who, when finally confronted with the truth, had risen to the challenge, choosing love and protection for his children over pride and denial. He had found his strength, and in doing so, had healed. And I, this old woman, had proven that I still had plenty of fight left in me. The revolution was complete, devastating for Chloe, but utterly victorious for my family. The best revenge wasn't vindictiveness or gloating. It was saving my beloved grandchildren from a life of neglect and emotional abuse. It was protecting my son from a manipulative adversary, and it was refusing to be underestimated, showing them all that an old woman's love and wisdom could be the most powerful force of all. At 67, surrounded by the laughter of my family, I had never felt more powerful, more purposeful, more profoundly at peace.